People Analytics at Inpulse, and today I'm joined by Cara from the Business of Emotions. And the name is in the title. Today we're going to be speaking all things good about emotions. So Cara, would you like to introduce yourself to the listeners?
So I'm passionate about being here today because we share so many commonalities in the importance of emotions. My name is Cara Cunniff and I am founder and CEO of the Business of Emotions. And we are a people and performance consultancy focusing specifically on how your people feel every single day when they come to work. How do they feel to be successful? And how do you want them to not feel to be successful? And the work I do is based very much on developing emotional intelligence, and then from that, growing that into emotional culture, and how across the whole business, emotions are either suppressed, are either aired, and we're changing on a daily basis with uncertainty and change that's happening all around us in the world, and that is impacting how our emotional states show up at work.
Absolutely. So really looking forward to this. It's obviously a topic that we share in common. As for those listeners that don't know, Inpulse Special, our USP is specialism in emotions. So unlike other providers, we actually assess emotions around how people feel in the workplace, which is hugely important for us because we know that's what drives behaviour and ultimately that's what drives performance. So Cara, just initial question for the listeners that don't know, obviously this term emotional intelligence, what is that to you? What does it mean for you?
So we break down emotional intelligence into 4 areas. So we have, firstly, self-awareness. What are the patterns and the triggers of our own personal emotions within the workplace, but within life? Then we have regulation. So we've worked out there is a pattern of emotions, but what do we do about that? How do we regulate those emotions in the workplace and in life? And then we have social awareness. So how do we manage and how aware are we of those people in our teams, in our business, their emotions within the workplace? And then finally, relationship management. All of this grows into relationships.
Absolutely.
How we work with other people within our teams, whether we work cross teams, whether when we go and have a coffee at the coffee machine, all of that is emotional intelligence, and building connection and relationships within business so that we can perform better. Because ultimately that's what this is all about. This is all about performance, productivity, efficiency, and those often sound much harder than emotions.
Yes.
And I think that's probably the first point to address here. In emotional intelligence, has often been seen as a soft skill. And yes, it's sometimes put into the L&D box of soft skills, but actually it is and is going to become more and more important over the course of the AI evolution. The skills of resilience, empathy, motivation, all part of the emotional intelligence toolbox. They are going to become more and more important as we progress through and use AI technology over the course of the next 100 years plus.
Yeah, and it's actually a topic we're talking about later today as a team, so definitely come on to discuss that as we go through today's conversation, because that future piece is really important, as you say, looking at the AI. So for us, obviously we measure emotions, and when we look back on last year's, just to bring through from what we found in our 2025 survey, one of the key emotions for us last year was that people have got this huge sense of commitment. This is really showing up as a positive emotion. But alongside that, on the negative side of it, people are feeling this underappreciated and an element of stress. And we've seen it in boardrooms, we've seen it with all of our clients in the last year, large efforts of transformation, lots of change that have arisen. And that obviously leads to an element of conflicted emotions as well. So I'm really committed to my organisation, but I do feel somewhat stressed. For you, how does that kind of show up with the work that you've been doing with leaders over the last 12 months?
So I did some work in the States with a large global pharma company, pharmaceutical organisation, and the issue they had, so they went through massive transformation and stress and high performance during COVID.
Okay.
They, really, really believed in what they did, and rightly so. They should believe in what they did because it was awesome, and they felt valued and they felt appreciated. Roll forward, the organisation is having to change. The organisation went through a large transformation during COVID and then has had to go through another transformation because there isn't the revenue streams coming through as it was during COVID. So they've had to make large redundancies. And if you imagine within some of the areas that the employees were living, that is the only job they could get.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you didn't drive, that was the only place you could get work. And this is work that has been in the families for generations. Right. So we're talking about a generational attachment to the business, as well as actually where am I going to get a job if I lose my job here? If this redundancy program, happens. Now, as it happened, it did happen, and so we've got. I'm very committed, and I really believe in what I do, and I really, really care about the patients, and we care about the drugs that we're making, conflicted with the threat of my livelihood. Yeah. And if we think about Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and what motivates us to do better every day, what happened in that environment was that the employees went from being able to service their mortgages to no longer being able to service a mortgage. So the threat that they were up against completely changed. And it was up to the organisation to really lean into how can we reward and move employees to a state where we're taking away from that threat piece, because that threat piece, even if you're committed and you believe in it and you're working to your purpose, your life's purpose, if you cannot service your debts, if you cannot put food on the table, if you cannot, if you're worried about having to move locations and maybe your children's schooling, they're the realities of what people are having to deal with every day. And therefore, as a leader, knowing that when your employee walks into work every day, they don't have a rucksack of life that they leave at the door. They bring that rucksack into work. And I've had leaders say to me, I ask my employees to leave their life stuff at the door.
I've heard that many times. Yes.
How is that possible? How is that possible?
Yeah, I've one of the things I talk about a bit in coaching is I use the analogy of stars in their eyes. You don't walk through the door and say, tonight, Matthew, I'm going to be, and leave all of that at the door and transform into this chameleon. You just can't do that. That's not life, is it? But interesting. That's probably where we were historically, and that leadership perspective. So just lean into that for us and just let us know how your perspective is on how that's changed. Because it's definitely a different backdrop, isn't it, from how a leader used to show up and that set of expectations. We're asking them to be more empathetic leaders, we're asking them to lean into it. But certainly when I started out in my HR career many years ago, it's very different. The world was slightly different and those managers had different sets of expectations. So we've gone on a bit of a journey, haven't we?
So I think there's two things to talk about, and if I don't say them now, I won't remember them. So one thing we need to address is, what is empathy?
Absolutely.
Because actually there is confusion around what that actually means. And secondly, it's the evolution of and what I talk about is updating the emotional rulebook. So if we look back in maybe to the industrial age, where you would come to work and you'd be told what you had to do, how you had to do it, and when it had to be done by. And there wasn't room for emotion. You would just literally show up, do your job, and go home. And so emotions didn't really play a part. Now we roll forward, and if we think about where emotions sit within the corporate world, which may have many hierarchies, or flat organisations, which adds its own complexity because it doesn't have hierarchies, emotions show up in a very different way. Do I feel safe to be able to say what I want to say. You know, I've seen something that needs to change. Do I feel safe?
Psychological safety.
The psychological safety.
Absolutely.
Is there an environment that has been set up in a way that allows me to be able to express myself in an appropriate manner? And I'll add that this isn't about just going in and saying this is what should happen.
Of course.
In an appropriate manner. So both corporate and flat organisations have their own set of emotional opportunities, as well as difficulties if you don't know how to manage it or haven't upskilled in that space. And then roll forward again, and we had COVID, and that threw a completely different lens on emotions and how we feel. Because let's not forget, we talk about emotions, and often that's I don't want to hear about emotions. I'm not interested in that. But actually, ask the question: how do you want to feel? Because that's what this is about.
Completely.
This is how you feel is how you will behave.
Absolutely. That's exactly why we ask the emotion question.
Yeah.
It's the driver to that behaviour, isn't it? If we don't ask and we don't know how people feel, how are we going to know what that impact is on their behaviour?
Yes, absolutely. And that is that start piece. That's that social awareness and self-awareness that sits in both those areas. And then once you do know the landscape, what do you do about it? Looking at the great work you do, you assess the environment, you talk to the individuals, you find out what's going on from a feeling perspective, because that's when we can change behaviour.
Yes.
And that's when we can influence culture. When we know what the landscape is. And then moving on to the empathy piece and motivation piece, that's all part of the work I do. It's the EQ training or EI training piece. What does motivation actually mean? What does motivation actually mean? We band it around like it's a very easy word, but do you know what intrinsically motivates your team? Because if you know that, then you can do something about it.
So just how many managers do you think do understand it?
So there are some great research out there about how self-aware we are and how we believe we are far more self-aware than we actually are.
Yes.
Really holding the mirror up to ourselves and saying, do you really know how that came across? You might believe how you think that came across, but actually, how did it really come across? And there's some great research by a lady called Tasha Uricht, who talks about how it's some huge stat, like 80% of us are not as self-aware as we believe we are.
No, I see that when we do our 360s. We have a blind spot sector and the hidden strengths, and there's a huge correlation in there between that statistic. I think people will say at the first feeling, how did you feel when you got this report? Yeah, I felt okay. And then you dig into it, and actually it's where the hidden strengths and the blind spots come, because actually there is a disconnect.
Absolutely, there is a disconnect.
Yeah.
So actually, in terms of motivation, if we can't look in the mirror and really accurately know ourselves, then we need to ask others for feedback. And also from the perspective of motivation, if we don't ask our teams, our team members, what actually motivates them, because we know for a fact that financial motivation will hit a point where it doesn't matter anymore. If I can service my needs, if I can service my family's needs, if I can pay my mortgage, talking about Maslow's hierarchy, if I can service those, then once that's happened, yes, a bit more money will be great. A bit more, maybe some kind of internal reward system might be great. But we will just start to spend to that level and get used to it.
Completely agree.
Whereas from the internal motivation, our purpose, am I doing something that means something? Do I have autonomy? Do I have autonomy, to be able to do what I think should be done in this job. All of these things are really important, and that is what motivates people, really intrinsically. So that's the kind of motivation piece. Do you know what really motivates your people from an intrinsic perspective? Then you have the things like empathy. Empathy is critical, and actually when I run my training programs on empathy, I start out with what is pity, what is sympathy. We move through what is empathy and what is compassion. We move through the journey, and it's really fascinating because actually there are very few of us who really know what empathy is. And I even last week found myself with my daughter, EQ is a journey, and we are always on it. And I found myself saying to my daughter, well, at least something. At least, that word at least, catch yourself. If you use that word at least, it means you are not in that moment being empathetic.
Absolutely. No, it's funny, you say that. I think things we practice, we don't preach necessarily in a personal life, and we catch ourselves.
Yes.
But it's a really good in check, isn't it? Just to see what that true sort of north is with some of those behaviours as well.
And it is a journey, and actually it's recognising your patterns. It's recognising what triggers you. If this thing triggers me, and I get fired up, and I can feel that wash of emotion inside me. If it's a desired, because it can be a desired emotion as well as undesired. If I feel that wash of maybe undesired emotion, what do I do about it in that moment? Or I see somebody else struggling. And often, and I don't know if you see this, but I find that organisations or people within organisations often want to run away. The moment somebody expresses something where they're vulnerable, it's like, whoa, don't know what to do here.
It's gone my way in HR.
Yes.
That's what you
Go to HR.
Go to HR.
Yes.
We see it a lot.
Yes.
Yeah. It takes a good leader to solution that in the moment.
Yes. And actually,
yes,
it's often not fixing it.
No, completely. It's sometimes just listening.
Yeah, listening to understand.
Completely. Yeah, and it's interesting, isn't it? I think that's where sometimes the way organisations are structured, the role of that managers particularly changed, and so they can move away from being in the moment because there are support functions around them that they can lean in. But now it's more important than ever, isn't it? That we're asking managers to think and do the emotional intelligence piece. Just on that point, so sort of some top tips. So I'm a manager in a business and I want to kind of think about some self-awareness pieces. Are there any sort of top tips you can give, sort of takeaways?
Yeah, so I think the first thing is just to get a small diary. If there is something that you are recognising in yourself as you and you'll probably know what it is because there'll be that ick feeling inside you. I do this when this happens. So it's just capturing it and recognising it. That is the first step because you know that something there isn't right. Now, if you have a trusted friend within the organisation, a trusted colleague, or it could be HR. If you have someone in that department that you can go to for support, talk to them about it. Talk to them about what is happening in that moment. Then, once you know that, you can actually start to change behaviour, adapt. You can put in place some new habits, some new rituals, creating some new personal systems for yourself when that happens. So that's the first thing, is just recognise it. And the first way to do that is to feel it. Really feel it in your body. If you feel sometimes your hands are tingling, somebody says something and you feel your hands are tingling, or you get that increased heart rate, we all have our own personal signs. Lean into them and recognise that that's something. Your body, it's data, and your body is giving you that information to say something here isn't right. What do you do about it? And so that's the first step. I think the next thing is to bring in the pause. So if you are in a position where you're feeling triggered, it's just a question of saying, don't do anything in this moment. Give yourself 7 seconds. Just 7 seconds for the body to just have a small reset. Take a breath. And breath work is incredible. And you can do something as simple as box breathing. So breathing in for 2, holding for 2, breathing out for 2, and holding for 2. And if you did a series of 3 or 4 of those, 2 things happen. Firstly, your breath will empower your body to start to calm down. But also, you're putting yourself back into the thinking brain again. So you're not in the reaction brain, you're in the thinking brain. And if you're in a meeting, and I often get asked this, because when I run workshops, we practice it, I get everyone on their feet to realign where your energy is.
Yes.
And they often say, but what do I do in a meeting when I can't do that? When I can't obviously, look at my hand and all these good things that we do to realign our body. All you need to do is, you can still breathe.
Absolutely.
But all you need to do is on your knee, just go, breathe in for 2, hold for 2, out for 2, hold for 2. And you just literally, tap it across your fingers.
Yeah.
Because again, the focused effort of focusing on a finger allows the brain to reset itself. And you might need to do, depending on the situation, you might need to do that 3 times, 8 times, 10 times. Just give yourself a moment to get back into that thinking brain.
Absolutely. And I think if there's others in the team who recognise that and do that behavioural habit as well. I've certainly worked with SLT members before, and there was 9 of us, and we all started to do the breathwork piece, and putting that pause in collectively had phenomenal impact in our team, because we work at pace, don't we? We think a 5-hour board meeting needs to be 5 hours full discussion to get things done, because we're all busy, we're going through change, we know there's this element of stress, and actually we've got to get comfortable with the pause, because there's huge impact on having that pause, isn't it, and restocking.
And actually the pause is interesting because it's just silence, and we never give ourselves silence.
No.
But if we it's just 7 seconds, and if I stop now for 7 seconds, I think you'd probably be going, what's she going to do? Why is she not talking?
I hate pauses, and that is my self-awareness piece. That's my confession. That is my, even as a coach, it's something I've had to get to grips with. I don't like pauses, I don't like the awkward silences, and that's the language we cut against it, isn't it? The awkward silence, which is so long. It's not an awkward silence, it's a healthy pause that we need.
It's just a chance to slow down and reconnect actually with yourself, rather than just rolling into whatever is going to come out in that moment, not always helpfully.
Absolutely.
And I think, so that's 2 things I've mentioned. I think the third one really is that as a leader, we often believe we have to fix.
Yes.
And fixing is, there are times we need to fix, but before we fix, we have to really know what's going on. So that might be a team conversation, that might be I just sense something's not being said here. What's everyone feeling? Sometimes you can use feeling cards. Sometimes I use feeling cards to bring out those conversations. So it's not, the eyeball of what are you feeling, but it's, hey, we've got some feelings on, or you can use an emotion wheel or feeling cards, so that it's a tool to allow emotions to be spoken about. So once you've understood what the emotions are and what is the story behind that, often the fix doesn't even need to happen.
No.
Because it was just that process of letting that story come out. And this is what we see a lot in change programs that there is friction because there is a new system, and often a team member may not have felt heard. And the issue is actually they weren't heard.
Completely.
The issue may not be that they're not on board with what's happening. They may believe purposely this is the right thing to do, but they just don't feel trained up enough, and they haven't been able to say it.
Yeah. And my observation of that is sometimes as leaders, we're ahead of the communications. We know what the change is going to be because we're planning it. And then we've got to take our employees on the journey, and they're getting that maybe 3-4 weeks after us, 5-6 weeks. So they're actually having to come to the pace of the change of this as well. And so there's this differential in the time frame and the emotions that come with that. As a leader, you've already dealt with emotions when you were aware of what that change was. I might need to make 10 people in my team redundant. So you go through that piece, and then a month later you're making those redundancies, and that's the first time they've heard about it. And they all then go through those emotions. You've got to pace them with that kind of mindset around how you felt when you first knew that news as well, which I think we forget, don't we? And again, that's all about pausing, isn't it? Taking time to think about how are they feeling in this moment.
Yes, it's and the empathy piece that is aligned with that. really having to get into their shoes, remembering in your shoes and then standing in their shoes, and imagining, what does this mean when they're getting that information? They're thinking about their job, they're thinking about paying the bills, they're thinking about paying the mortgage, all that's really important stuff. When the economy is particularly challenged, the work-life balance, the life balance piece is huge, and is going to be coming into work. The uncertainty piece. So knowing that sometimes that your employees actually just need to talk. And I have an acronym that is very easy to remember. It's just TED. So tell me more, explain to me, describe to me. So before you've gone in to solve that problem, tell me more.
Absolutely, and we're all guilty of it. I remember in the recession doing mass redundancies, and it very much became a process. So, exposed to the discussion, going to the teams to say, here we go, unfortunately this role is redundant. You go through the script, you go through the process to keep you legally compliant, and as you say as a leader, rolling your sleeves up to fix the solution, but forget about emotions and empathy. And actually, it's instead of going through, this is how much you're going to get, this is the process, this is where you're going to go, actually putting that TED in there is incredibly powerful, isn't it? Let's just do the human element of that conversation. Let's remind ourselves that this is being done to these people, and as leaders, we need to be mindful of that.
And it's out of control for them.
Completely out of control.
Exactly as you say, it's being done, and you're the receiver, and the threat, the response that comes out of that. So empathy in that space. There's no at least you're getting a bonus, or at least you've got this amount of weeks of brain's gone. What am I thinking?
Start the redundancy payment.
Thank you.
Yes.
I'll say that again. And at least you've got that amount of redundancy payment. The at least word does not matter.
Absolutely.
It is about what is happening to them in that moment.
Completely.
And listening.
I'd really love to hear from you as well as we come to a conclusion around the future of emotional intelligence. Obviously, we're talking heavily at the moment, and we're guilty of it in our team. Well, not guilty of it, but we're actually discussing in the next session about AI. And so we know this is part of our roadmap and our tech roadmap, but actually what line managers and leaders are going to need is going to be incredibly important. And so what's your perspective on emotional intelligence when you think about the backdrop of AI?
So, we know, well, we don't know where AI is going, but I think we all are starting to experience what is possible with AI. And we will all have opinions on it, whether we like it, whether we don't like it. But the reality is it's going to speed up life, it's going to speed up business. It will make certain jobs difficult. Whether we will need all the jobs that are out there because of AI is questionable, and I think we need to be in a position where we are open. I'm talking to my 19-year-old and my 20-year-old about this at the moment. How do you maintain being open and flexible in terms of your learning so that you can adapt when it comes to that moment you're going for that job and you have the skill set and the numbers of people going for that job have doubled? What is going to set you apart? What is the differentiator? Yes, you may have great leadership skills, and sitting within that leadership piece is EQ. So it's all about how you relate to other people. How do you build connection? Before any form of negotiation, sales negotiation, before any form of contractual negotiation, before you're employed for a job, there is a piece of work that happens which is about building relationships, and that is going to be the game changer in the future.
I was listening to a podcast actually, and they narrated it as the future leader will be human, and that is the differential, isn't it? The human skills that we can't replace.
Absolutely.
AI is definitely going to have a purpose for processes and giving us the information and giving us the data, but as leaders we need to do the human connection and understand the connection between the two.
And that is a question of being able to hold the mirror up to ourselves and say, am I as good as I could be? You know, or do you know what? Today I did this and it didn't work very well. What do I need to do differently? So being very flexible with how we look at ourselves, you know, developing ourselves, but developing our people, our teams. You know, are we as leaders putting enough time into our teams and developing them, putting or are we focused on the operational piece? You know, rolling forward, the operational piece AI will start to become more and more important within that piece. And as a leader, the human leader, you know, it's going to be looking at the teams and the individuals within the teams and bringing them on in the best possible way we can, and being flexible in our leadership. And the only way we can be flexible in our leadership, you know, in this moment it needs more commanding style. In this moment it needs a more coaching style. That all comes down to the human and being flexible and where EQ fits in that. So what do I think? I think businesses need to be taking EQ, emotions, far more seriously, because 5-6 years from now, it's going to be the human that is doing the job, that's going to be coming into the office or remote working, backed up by systems. And if you are not differentiating yourself, then getting jobs in 5 or 6 years is going to become harder.
Completely. And last top tip for managers, so if managers listen to today's session to think, how can I become future ready? Any top tips that you can share for them?
Oh, I like that question. Yes. So on our website we have a scorecard. So the first thing you can do is just literally take the scorecard. And that is I'm going to give a broad brush assessment of myself.
Yes.
And once I've done that, I can then start to think about how I could embed that in my organisation. So, you know, what's the layout of my team in this? So I mean, that genuinely is the first thing, is just take the scorecard. Get yourself an assessment on your awareness, your self-awareness, your regulation, your social awareness and your relationship management.
That's a great tip. So we will make sure we'll link your website in our fireside chat.
Great.
It's been a pleasure, Cara. I've really enjoyed today's conversation. I'm sure we'll have to do part 2 because there's lots more on this topic. It's been fabulous to talk to you.
Great.
Thanks so much.
Thank you very much. Thanks for having me.
Thank you.